Bisexual? There is no such thing as a bisexual microphone.
Oh, I thought you were going to say there's no such thing as a bisexual at all, because our ardent listener would beg to differ.
No, there's no such thing as a bisexual microphone. There's plenty of bisexuals, and one thing I always...
For the record, I said bidirectional. Thank you.
No, he didn't. One of the things that I hate, just culturally, is this idea that... it was the only good joke in that Bros movie, and it was in the trailer about there was Bisexual Awareness Week, and no one did anything. Because... And the worst offenders, by the way, I think straight people understand bisexuals better than gays do. I have just...
Probably.
Not just anecdotally, because gays are like, oh, no, doesn't that just mean you're gay? But straight people are like, okay, I can see it. And I think it's another way in which the gay movement is a lot less tolerant. But anyway, what was I going to tell you about after that? I told you about something else?
I don't know.
I have so much material to work with. Right when we...
I said I have something that we can talk about that's very important, but you may not like it.
Well, this is the way that he leads into everything. Everything has an introduction,
a qualification,
or a qualification where it's like, well, I'm going to say something, but you might not like it. Well, okay. What are my choices at that point? Either I say, no, shut up, go away, which I've never said, or I say, well, then just get it out. And you'd be like, well, but I don't want to. And then you have to do this lead-in thing or something like that.
It softens the blow. If you know that I'm going to say something that might upset you,
everything from you is a blow. So I don't need any kind of softening. I have pillows up the entire...
Should I put that on my dating profile?
Everything's a blow for a good time call. No, anyway. Qualifications aside, hello. It's good to see you here. I have... Of course it's serious.
It's good to see me here. He walks up the stairs every morning and glares at me like he doesn't see me every morning.
I have to laugh because...
you might as well say it's normal to see you here. Like, don't say good, don't say bad. It's normal to see you.
If someone told me it's normal, I would have a breakdown. That is the worst. Can you imagine? How are you doing? Normal. Like that. Could you imagine a human being saying that to another human being? It's very strange. Okay, well, it's like another podcast where they said we're going to get to the age where we're going to be the old grandparents in the Gelson's line on Shabbat, being like, "Hey, Mort, how are you?" Mort responding, "Fair." That's where we're at now. You think we have to wait to get to that point? We're there.
I told you what my great-grandmother used to say. She was 90-something years old. Well, okay, when she was in her 80s, she said, if you asked her how she was doing, she would say, "Oh, I'm able to sit up and take nourishment." When she was in her 90s, and you asked her how she was doing, she'd say, "I just don't know why God left me here this long."
What? You never told me that.
Yep. She lived until 94 or something like that.
I think that's one thing this generation envies is people who get to such a long age they wonder why they're still alive. Because no one from this generation is going to do it. We're going to have insane medical advances and no will to live. But anyway, I have a story too, but I'm going to say it and you're not going to like it. So let's start with the one that you have first, and then I will mention my
hold on.
Boffo story.
Let me ask: is yours like a lighthearted thing that we can joke and talk about, or is it something serious?
It's very serious. It's about inflation. So anyway, go ahead and do yours.
Okay. Well, mine's pretty serious too.
Oh, and if you mention the name David,
I will not mention
Italian.
the name David.
I swear to God.
I might mention his cohort, Sarah, but he was not present, so...
You call her a whore? Cohort? That's mean. How do you share whoring responsibilities?
I don't know. You and I do it now. No, someone's got to work the street corner. With the old woman at the end of the...
She works at the street corner. We have our very fun neighbor on the corner where... She came over and talked about my plants, and she has a very kind of spiky hair and a spiky personality. And I said, "Hey, what do you drink? What can we bring you? We're headed to the store right now." And she said, and I quote, "I've never refused anything." which I think is the greatest answer I've ever heard to what do you drink. So,
And
anyway.
probably something you will say when you get her age.
Well, I'm already there. My back hurts. Anyway, what's your story? Morning Glory.
No, it's not a story. It's a topic to discuss.
Okay.
That is not getting enough discussion, quite frankly.
God, if it's abortion.
Is that getting enough? I think that's getting enough
That's
discussion.
the joke. It gets more than enough discussion.
The Electoral Count Act.
Ooh. Why wouldn't I like this?
It's pretty heavy and it's pretty in the weeds.
Do weed.
So, the Electoral Count Act, which is what led to this whole fiasco. Well, first of all, people act like the stuff that happened in 2020 with Trump was unprecedented. Like, that's not true. It's happened in many, many times in history where people have contested elections. And it's gotten especially heated. What was the election? You know this because you're a history person. It was like 1818 or something like that. Like way back when, there was a very heated problem with one of the presidential elections.
Oh no, that was 1880s, wasn't it? Samuel Chase and Benjamin Harrison, something like that.
One of them. But the Electoral Count Act came as a result of that very heated thing. And apparently...
Because the House of Representatives basically decided who the president was at that point.
Right. So apparently, according to scholars, the original Electoral Count Act was rushed. Mm-hmm. And they say that because looking at it, they did not think it through, according to them. Mm-hmm. There is, as Sarah Isger pointed out, one sentence in the act that is over 200 words with like 50 commas in it. Someone did not take a red pen to this act and make sure that it was airtight and made sense. So that's what brought all the problems that we were encountering in 2020.
Oh, time for the street cleaning car. I just love how we get going on a topic, and it's always like, next there's going to be like a Sousa parade out front with like tubas and stuff. There's going to be fireworks. There's going to be a nuclear meltdown. There's going to be a bunch of rabid dogs. Anything and everything that could possibly happen will happen when you hit that record button. And that's a sign from God that we should stop. But anyway.
And we're not going to listen.
And we will never stop. So the Electoral Count Act was developed in haste, you're saying?
Yes. Well, that's what legal
in the late
scholars
1800s.
say. Yes. So that's what led to a lot of this stuff that happened in 2020, where you could read into the Electoral Count Act things that may not necessarily have been meant to be there.
Oh.
So there's certain wording and certain verbiage that are not clear and made people think, oh, well, Mike Pence can just say, no, I do not accept this. And, you can
just circle certain letters and it's like William Jennings Bryan is a bitch or something like that.
Okay, in a way, yes. But the point is, it led to a lot of disagreement and misreading. Mm-hmm. So the current Congress is trying to reform the Electoral Count Act. And this is why I'm kind of upset. No one talks about this, and this is a big fucking deal. Like this is not in the news.
Congress does.
Right. This is not in the news. This is not on any type of...
The only mention I've heard about it at all, and this is somebody who is on Twitter every day, reads about politics every day. I do. It's kind of my job. The only thing I have heard is Republicans need to get on board with this. That's the only thing I heard. And whenever I hear that, I'm always suspicious because it means that they're doing some awful sweeping problem under the rug that's going to create horrible new precedent thing that you really need to be paying attention to. That's always a red flag to me.
Right, so no one's paying attention to this.
Right.
So first of all, there are two versions of the Reform Act, one in the House, one in the Senate. Apparently they have each passed their own versions.
To do reconciliation.
Right. So they have to do reconciliation, and they're trying to decide... to back up for just a second, this is why I do give credit to people like The Dispatch, because they are talking about it, and talking about it in fact-based stuff. So they're not giving this wild opinion. You know, Sarah had these two legal scholars, one on both sides of, yes, we should do this. I don't know if we should do this. And they had a little debate back and forth. It was good. It was enjoyable listening. It was informative. So I learned some stuff. So basically, they're worried that this needs to be pushed through soon before the next Congress goes into session in
Why the
early
rush?
early 2023, because they're afraid that if Republicans do take back the House, that a Speaker of the House, McCarthy, would not allow this to be the reconciled version to be voted on.
And why is that? What is in there that is so objectionable?
That's what I don't know.
Well, the only thing I could imagine is that they explicitly write in this Reformed Electoral Count Act that there is no active role that the vice president holds.
That's exactly what they've written.
Okay, so that's why they want to do it so a potential Republican vice president is not put into a position where they could choose to accept certain states. I'm going to say this so carefully. Choose to accept the results of certain states' electors, even if an issue is raised with those electors. By the way, I just have to say, just mentally, why would the vice president be placed in any kind of role? Because, the vice president is in charge of the Senate, all that stuff. I get that. But why would they be put in any kind of position where they could potentially cast a vote on their own electoral viability? Why wouldn't there just be some other kind of okay, they step out and then someone steps in as a proxy for them? Something like that. Because that seems like that wasn't thought out very well. Because if you're running for re-election, you're the person on that ticket that's being voted upon, and then you choose let's say you're an asshole and you choose something explicitly in your own interest in here, even if whether there's an issue with the votes or not. That seems like a problem number one. But B, problem number two is, I read the section of the original Electoral Count Act when all of this stuff happened, because Pence can say we're not going to accept those states, and I was like, okay. So I read through it, and I was like, all right, I understand that. I understand that interpretation, that the reason why the vice president is being brought into this situation is it's such a sensitive matter that by design, the vice president could choose to go state by state and say, this one, not this one, an issue's been raised at this one, so this one needs to be reevaluated. And something gets thrown back to the states to then send the correct. I could also see why that process would be maddening. And, it leaves role for Congress to challenge every election, no matter how close, which they have. I mean, God, they challenged Bush in 2004, and they challenged, they obviously challenged Bush in 2000. So Democrats have challenged just as much, if not more, than Republicans have the results of presidential elections, and no one wants to talk about that. But then reforming it so that the vice president is removed from the process entirely in what they can and can't vote on seems like an overreach that doesn't have a correction. Just to me. But go ahead.
Well, no. So that was, big evidence of why they think it was written in haste originally, is that they didn't think that through, and they didn't word it carefully enough to be very clear with what the vice president's role should be in that scenario. So this Electoral Count Reform Act of 2022 seeks to change that, and I will read verbatim. Let me find it. Role of the Vice President. Affirmatively states that the constitutional role of the Vice President as the presiding officer of the joint meeting of Congress is solely ministerial, and that he or she does not have any power to solely determine, accept, reject, or otherwise adjudicate disputes over electors. So they spell it out. Okay. They say, you are only presiding over this. You cannot really say anything of import.
Okay.
So that's problem one, quote unquote, solved, right?
Right.
So now we ask the question, okay, so who does sign off on...
Here comes your street cleaning bus, the bussy.
That
Who does
raises the
sign
question, who does sign off on the electors?
Right.
So they've written that into this, saying governors, basically. So the state's governor, unless otherwise specified in the laws or constitution of the state, are responsible for submitting the certificate of ascertainment identifying the state's electors. Congress could not accept a slate submitted by a different official. This reform would address the potential for multiple state officials to send Congress competing slates of electors. So there's a problem with that, which they raised. So that's all well and good, right?
Right.
But we have... You're now just putting the problem on a different person.
Right.
Yes, it's a little bit different because that person is not directly involved in being vice president. I mean, potentially they could be if they were, I won't go there. But, for example, let's say Carrie Lake were the governor of Arizona.
Right.
And in 2024, if Trump runs again and loses, she could, as governor, say, oh, well, I don't accept the results of Arizona, and so I'm not going to send them. Like, she's going to veto it. She's not rubber stamp it.
Right.
So you could have that on the Democratic side too. You're giving a lot of power to a governor who could go rogue and pull something out of their ass.
Wait, so the power gets kicked back to the governors?
Yes.
In this scenario?
They have to sign off on the slate of electors sent.
Well,
and so if they think there's a lot of fraud and they don't want to sign off on something that they don't think is above board, they have the power to do that.
Well, they're very stupid because that would have won Trump in 2020.
Right, but you could easily see it on the other side as well.
Right, I can see that, but they're stupid because there's been frequently a majority of Republican governors. Now, whether or not Ducey and other ones like that in 2020 would have actually made a difference, who knows? Like, they probably would be like, oh, no, it's fine, because they're stupid. But there's also the possibility that they're creating a new problem to then have to, agitate at the state level as far as governors that have to sign a pledge of I'm not going to interfere with the electoral count, or I'm not going to claim fraud, regardless of results, something like that. In looking through the Constitution, originally there was not this issue because everything came down to representatives and senators, each state gets a vote, that kind of thing. So it was easy to figure out a tie. Like, that was not hard. It was designed a certain way. When we messed with that and we went to more direct elections and then electors and things like that, then we got ourselves into some trouble because then you end up with situations like this. So the possibility could go back to the states, I think, in the sense that if there is a situation like this, then each state gets one vote. That is a way I think that could potentially fix this. And if you have 50 states, you have 50 votes, whoever gets the majority of those states does that, and the governors get removed from the process entirely. Now, here we also open ourselves up to a situation where it could be March and you don't know who the president is. That's a big problem that no one has thought about, is that this could just keep going. Because it happened before.
So apparently, what they're pushing for and what they're shopping through Congress is a slight change to this, saying that if a governor does go rogue, if a governor does dispute something, that gets taken directly to a federal court, and the justices can decide. But then that leads to
who appoints the justices? Yeah,
that's what exact court does it go to, and who are those people? Are those people voted on? Are those judges voted on, or are they appointed by an executive. It opens up a big can of worms trying to mess with some of this. So I kind of understand the need to reform it, but I feel like they're reforming it a little bit too much than they needed to.
Well, because then you put yourselves in a position where the reform necessitates further reforms. So the Band-Aid needs more Band-Aids.
Because they don't think through the possible outcomes before they just write this stuff, right? Like,
there's people who specialize in this, and if they can't figure it out, then that's a problem.
Well, and I'll put a pin in this. There's one last part of this. There are several more parts, but one last part that's of import that we had a problem with in 2020. So the other thing that Reform Act does, it makes a higher objection threshold. So it raises the threshold to lodge an objection to electors to at least 1/5 of the duly chosen and sworn members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. This change would reduce the likelihood of frivolous objections by ensuring that objections are broadly supported. Currently, only a single member of both chambers is needed to object to an elector or slate of electors. So that we ran into that problem, right, in 2020.
But that's quite a bit, because you have to get the senator of that state. Not many states have 2 of either party senators. That's a rare thing. And you have to get a representative from that state on board. That's still quite a bit. But then saying you have to have all of the representatives or a majority of the representatives plus the senator, that's never going to happen. You will never have an objection unless it's something like Wyoming, where you have 1 representative.
Wait a minute. Did I misinterpret what I read, or did you?
The interpretation I got was that you now have to have a majority of the representatives plus a senator instead of 1 representative and 1 senator.
From not from the state. No. So
the majority of representatives, period?
Yes.
Oh,
no, not a majority. 1/5
of all of the representatives.
Yes, of all the representatives and senators.
Oh, well, then you will never have an objection ever.
I'll read it one more time. The Senate says raises the threshold to lodge an objection to electors to at least 1/5 of the duly chosen and sworn members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate.
So 20 senators and 87 representatives, you will never have an objection. Ever. So they're basically just making the problem go away by raising a threshold.
Right. So I agree that 1 is, too low. 1/5 might be too high. I don't know.
You should compromise at 3/5. I don't understand why we put ourselves in this situation of making something more complicated and then making a solution even more complicated so that we shoot ourselves in the foot. Brazil just had a presidential election earlier this week. They're the most comparable country to us in size and democratic function. And by the end of the day, they knew who had the majority of votes, and now they go to a runoff. It was De Silva and Bolsonaro. That was very easy. They have 200 and something million people, and by the way, a lot worse infrastructure than we do. I mean, you have people in the fucking rainforest there. And they were able to figure it out by the end of the day.
Do they get to vote?
They do. Everyone gets to vote. People are voting from the middle of the Amazon.
Do they actual vote?
Yes.
Do they actually vote, I mean?
They do. People are voting from the middle of the Amazon, and yet it still takes us 3 weeks to count the ballots from LA County. So what's the problem? Why are other countries able to figure this out better than we can when we practically invented the concept? That's embarrassing to us. I remember when they said, okay, we're putting in machine voting because then we can tabulate stuff faster. We never went to Florida again. We don't want to Florida in 2000 again. We're not going to do the little Chad thing anymore. So everything's going to be by machine. It's going to be so much faster. And I remember at the time, liberals howled because the company building the machines was Diebold. And Diebold was a Republican donor company or something like that. And they're like, Dick Cheney's going to rig the machines in 2004. John Kerry doesn't have a chance. I remember when liberals wanted paper ballots and wanted voter ID and verified votes and everything like that. And sure enough, that all got tossed out the window. Now it's like, oh yeah, great, we want a machine, and I don't care who comes in and votes, and we're not going to know for a couple weeks who wins. It's the entire system is so broken, and their solution to it is to figure out what happens in a strange mathematical eventuality of a tie or of a particular issue where certain numbers of states want to change the reporting or they don't trust the results of what comes in. That's not where the issue is. The issue is when the votes start. I think a lot more people would have a lot more faith in the election, both Democrat and Republican, if you go in, you hand them some form of identification, you get a paper ballot, you fill it out, it's there, and it gets counted by the end of the day. That is your Electoral Count Act. That is the way that you fix this problem. I don't think there would ever be an objection to an election if that was what the system was that was in place.
Take it one step further. Don't even wait to count at the end of the day. Count it right there. They give you the ballot, you turn around, you give it behind the curtain, and there's, 10 people sitting at a table, and they're physically counting them as they're being handed to them.
Right. You get your I voted sticker, and your I voted sticker means it's not just something that where they give you two and you put them on your nipples like I do on the way out, which is fun. They give you one. It says that you voted and that your vote counted. Done. Very easy.
Anyway, to tie this up in a bow, did you have one more point?
Well, the one more point was looking at this situation and what the Constitution originally intended for elections. Maybe if they really want to reform the electoral system and the Electoral Count Act, maybe we need to go about it in a constitutional way. Maybe they need a constitutional convention and an amendment that determines this kind of situation.
Rather than just... that leads directly into my thing that I was going to say. No one hears about this. No one knows about it. No one is educated about it because it's being done in the cloak of darkness. A constitutional amendment could not be done in the cloak of darkness, right?
Which is one of the worst Harry Potter movies, yes. The Cloak of Darkness.
So, I'm telling you, as our listeners, please go read about this, educate yourself about it, and know what the hell is going on, because this could potentially be something that changes the face and the workings of our country and its elections.
Or at least mathematically figure out the number of electors from each state so that you don't have a situation where there's a tie. Make them odd numbered so there's not going to be this issue. Make the number of states odd numbered so if each state has one vote, you have 51 or 53. Whatever the fuck you have to do, make it 49. Put the Virginias back together. Something like that. I don't care. But the way that this is set up mathematically where you can keep getting into a situation of, oops, we have a tie, or oops, we have a situation where this state has an issue of 5 people shoving in a ballot or something like that. Maybe fix that stuff first rather than... It's not the way you count it. You should fix what's being counted first. That's what needs to be... That's where the problem is. What needs to be counted is not legitimate. Start with that. Forget this. So I don't know.
Go educate yourself. Read about it.
Read about it.
Now, what was your topic?
Well, inflation is a big issue on voters' minds. And, the cost of goods is going up.
No, really?
It is?
I hadn't noticed.
I had no idea. You're telling me this now for the first time. And so as a result, those fancy charcuterie boards that you're used to, or you were used to in the, wealthier times, have now been replaced by butter boards. This is the hot new trend on TikTok that the young people are doing. They get a board.
I'm really glad we led in with the serious, and now we're doing this frivolous bullshit.
I'm serious as cancer. Rhythm is a dancer. People cannot afford meat and cheese, so they are getting butter, sticking it on a board, which, who the fuck is cleaning that up? That's going to be a big-ass pain. Smearing it on there and covering it with edible flowers, microgreens, and other extremely expensive toppings. And then people are sitting around at a party and just eating fucking butter.
On bread
until
or
the cows
just
come home.
or just eating it?
On a dick. No, on bread, yes. What do you think? No one's just sitting there eating spoonfuls of butter. What's wrong with you?
Paula Deen did. What?
And then you see how that turned out.
She became racist.
But
Butter makes you racist, folks.
I don't know if these people have seen the cost of Kerrygold recently. But apparently this is the thing now where they're like, if you can't afford to do a charcuterie board, try one of these viral butter boards. And so I would just love to go to a house where they have a big block of butter smeared onto a wooden board on the counter and everyone gets a bite. We're basically, as a culture, screaming towards fondue pots again. You know that's going to come back in the next few months.
I have no problem with fondue. But however,
I have a problem with the gas it gives people. Have you the fondue parties? Everyone has gas. You want to sit there while a bunch of people fart in a sunken living room? With closed cigarettes?
We don't
Horrible.
have a sunken living room. Anyway.
Well, if you want to bring back the 70s, you have to bring back all the 70s.
With Jello molds included.
Oh, God. Give someone you love an aspic this Christmas. We should have...
An ass pick?
We should bring back aspics. Not to eat, just to look at. Because who doesn't want a dinner that has a little bit of rebound?
I've had a point. Now you just...
About the butter?
Trounced all over it. So what I thought you were going to say was, people making things like boards with compound butters and stuff like that. So, like, I could see it being a trend where, you make a cinnamon honey butter and basil butter and
that's what people are doing.
I mean, all kinds of things, and setting those, like 3 of those on a board instead of a cheese. And so you have different flavors of butter that you can spread on different flavors of crackers and stuff like that. Like, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But from how you just described it, it sounds very different.
Well, no, that's exactly what you're talking about. Or that's exactly what I've been talking about here. I'm trying to look up the picture to show you so you don't think I'm just mentally ill.
But I don't...
See?
I don't think
Butterboard
that
on
would...
TikTok.
Well, no, but that's what you're describing, yes.
They're just putting shit on top. But they're also mixing it in with, like, red pepper, and it's on CNN right now. They're showing it. They're diving it. If someone did a cream cheese board and they show some pomegranate seeds on there.
Okay, so my point is I've made a compound butter before. I took honey and cinnamon and stuff.
Did you put it on a board?
No, because I made it for, like, a breakfast that I cooked. But so you soften butter, you mix in your other ingredients in a mixer, and then you roll it back into a log on parchment paper, and you put it in the fridge so it hardens up again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you serve it with whatever. So you slice it and put it on waffles or bagels or whatever the fuck you're using. It's good. It's fancy. It's fun. People like it. So I could see... I don't know how much cheaper that is than just getting, like, a block of... what's that cheese that we like? Dubliner cheese.
Or Dubliner or something.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't know where people are saving money here. Butter is not particularly cheap.
Well, it's not that much cheaper than cheese. So if you
Yeah.
get 2 blocks of cheese versus, like, 3 blocks of butter, like, it's the same price.
Shit. It's the same shit, and everyone's,
So if
by the time you buy the microgreens.
I think they're just trying to push the inflation issue to get people to do their trend. I could, if they just left it as a trend, I could see people actually getting on board with it because...
Like, you at home, you can make a good charcuterie board for $20 or less. That's, I think, a good sort of... I was going to say Neiman Marcus. That's a good sort of Mason-Dixon line. I don't know why those occupied the same space in my brain. I am mentally ill. But I don't know why you would have to spend more than $20 on a decent charcuterie board, because you just get a cutting board in your house. It's clean, of course. Get, like, 2-3 cheeses, 2-3 meats, and then some, like, apricot jam, and dried cranberries, almonds, whatever. The whole point is whatever you have in the fridge. You shouldn't have to go out and do this special. And when I see people go and get the cracker cuts of cheese from Costco, turn it upside down off of the foam thing with the imprint of the cello still on it, and then peel it off and just stick it on a board, I want to set myself on fire. Because I've been to restaurants where they do that. It's gross.
Well, okay. I don't. I'm gonna push back. I don't think you could probably do it for $20 right now.
$20.
No.
No, because you go to Trader Joe's and the brie is $3.97. Their Dubliner equivalent is like $4.23, and you can get one more cheese.
I think it's
for
more
under
like
$5.
$6.
No, their Dubliner is cheap. The Trader Joe's.
Most
cheddar
cheeses
melange.
that I've seen that we've purchased have been like anywhere from $5 to $8, and that's per cheese. And then the meats are
Okay, 15 and then
$7 to
pick one
$10.
meat. So you could do it all for 10. Or so you could do. I'm sorry, you could do it all for 20. Pick 3 cheeses. Let's say 4 times 3 is 12. Then spend the remaining 8 on a meat, and you're fine. Or spend the remaining 5 on a meat on just a little thing of salami, and get some almonds or something like that, and you're fine.
I don't know.
Or how about this? Here's how you
for your own
no. Fuck your edification. No, how about this? If you're having people over, either spend a little bit more and get the stuff and have them each bring a bottle of wine, or have them each bring their favorite cheese.
No. I wouldn't do that.
Why?
Because then you get like 3 of the same type of cheese.
What are the
possibly.
chances that everyone likes the same cheese? Or they would pick the same cheese?
According to etiquette rules, foodie rules, you know, there's a very specific way you make a cheese board, and that is you have to have a hard cheese, a semi-soft cheese, and a blue cheese.
Well, what do etiquette rules say about smearing a stick of butter on a board? Nothing. They say dick all.
Emily Post is rolling in her grave.
Was she the one who founded the Washington Post?
No, I don't. Emily Post was Miss Manners.
That's Ms. Manners to you. It's Mammers. We need a trans etiquette columnist. I've decided. Because then they could solve all our issues about pronouns and usage and bathrooms and you know a skirt with a boner. Everything could be solved. There needs to be a trans etiquette columnist. If you are listening to this show and you either are trans and are good with etiquette, or you know someone who is, please reply in the comments or send us a message. We are looking for a trans etiquette correspondent, and that will be very. We can't have Colin wear all these hats. That's just mean. But
He's also not trans or gay.
Well, that's okay. We could fudge the numbers. But that's why we need the Electoral Count Act, so we can't fudge the numbers. But if you are a trans etiquette aficionado, please let us know.
Yes, I'm very curious as to what that would look like. But yeah, if you want to write a trans etiquette column, we'll put it on our Carpe Forum site.
Great. We've been watching a lot of Judge Judy, and if you have Pluto TV, it's a free app. Again, I've mentioned this before. They don't pay us, and we don't pay for them. So it's a non-transactional relationship. But if you have the app, seasons 1 and 2 of Judge Judy, which is about 400 episodes, is on Pluto. And if you want to step back into the mid-90s, this is your ticket.
It's frightening, folks.
The haircuts, the blazers and sweaters.
The women who claim to be 18 who look like they're 45.
Okay, there was this one woman who was like, she quote, just graduated high school and she's 18. With the dark lips and like the baby doll dress and everything and the long hair, this woman honestly looked 50. Like, if she could pass for 50 today. Which is so weird because the women today who are 50 are trying to look 18.
Well, no, the weird thing is you looked her up online. She looks the exact same.
She looks the exact same. She hasn't aged a bit. Good
Which is either frightening or Judge Judy was not a real show.
Well, I love that Judge Judy was a witch. But I love that we got to see one of, like, it was like the 3rd or 4th episode ever made. And so they really hadn't cemented what the show intro was. Like, the show intro was giving Judge Judy biographical information, like, Judge Judith Scheinman has been a family court judge for 23 years. That's not in any of the intros that have happened since season 1. Like, the intros now, it's like, the cases are real, the rulings are final. This is her courtroom. Like, they've changed. So you have this original intro, and the set's a little bit different. It's a little bit more 90s Office. Like, it's not so wood paneled and everything. Like, there's like green fabric and stuff like that. And there's no confessionals after. You don't talk to any of the. They don't get the defendant and the plaintiff to give their opinion after the case. All that they do is just cut to the audience reaction shots. Which, by the way, you ever want to see diversity? That is the most diverse audience you could ever imagine. There's Asian grandmas. There are black aunties. There are young Hispanic men. There are, like whites of all shapes and sizes. It is the greatest audience diversity ever. And everyone is on the same page when someone is fucking ridiculous. I love to see the variety of reactions when someone, like, one of the episodes we watched, it had this guy who I think was Italian. Like, he was very, like, babada boobity, talking about his dog, like a Rottweiler that got off leash in, like, Runyon or something and bit someone in the arm, like, almost bit off this guy's tricep. And he was so stereotypical. He was yelling, and he was the first person, I think, ever on that show to get kicked out of a courtroom.
Because he cursed. You don't curse in my courtroom.
He yelled asshole or something, and they did the longest bleep in history. Like, they bleeped out like a minute and a half, and he had to be sent out with his little windbreaker to wait in the lobby of the set. It's great.
And now that you've endorsed Pluto TV,
What?
we will go have the rest of our day and let these fine folks have the rest of theirs.
Fine.
These mediocre folks? You want to insult our listener?
Fine. More like
Have a great day and go fuck yourself.
yes. I'm sorry, this is B-roll here. Why? There was a woman just walking by right now who had her hand over one eye, like she just came on. And I don't understand why. Because her husband was on the phone and she's covering up one eye like a fucking pirate. Who are these people? And why does everybody who walks by our front yard have to look into it? I mean, I put a lot of effort into making it look good, but everyone is sitting there and picking around. Halloween is going to be a disaster. Anyway.